Hey Jack, can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, how's it
That's
going?
good.
Nice to finally meet you.
Thanks. It's last week. I'm sorry about that. It was something I couldn't really get around.
That's okay. That's all right. Thank you for joining us today. So our guest for our post-show Q&A today is legendary stuntman, stunt coordinator, and second unit director who has worked on films such as the Fast and Furious franchise, Venom, Bad Boys for Life, Jumanji, Anchorman, Knight Rider, The Dukes of Hazzard, among many other great film and television shows. He's also worked as a stunt coordinator and the second unit director on Austin Powers and Goldmember and The Cat in the Hat. So everybody, please welcome Jack Gill, everybody.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kira. I'm the co-host. Nice
Hi,
to meet
Kira.
you. So how are you holding up, first of all? Like how's everything in quarantine? Hopefully you're doing well.
It's been great here because I'm not home very often. So now that we are home with the whole family, I've got 14 acres here with lots of motorcycles and play toys. So even though we can't go out to restaurants, we do dine at home every night, and then we go out and play on the motorcycles every day. So it's good to be home. It's just I've gotten now to where I kind of want to get out and start working again. I've gotten that itch again.
Yeah. So if you Sean, if you just wanted to.
Yeah, sure. So how did you get your start in the career, and what inspired you to go into that field specifically of like stunts?
I was racing motorcycles professionally. I was racing motocross, and as a professional, I was making a pretty good living, I thought, at racing motorcycles, and that's kind of what I was going to do, and end up probably owning a motorcycle shop. And then I ran into Hal Needham, who was an epic stuntman and director who directed Smokey and the Bandit and Cannonball Run and all these other fantastic movies. And he convinced me to come out to Hollywood and become a stuntman, mostly because there weren't a lot of motorcycle slash stunt guys at that time. When I got in, there were a lot of horsebackers and a few car guys, but not very many motorcycle guys. So when I got in the business, the first thing he wanted me to do was jump a motorcycle over 6 burning cars. And a couple other guys had turned it down. And so I came in and said, look, if I can pick the motorcycle and pick the ramp, I can do it for you. And once I did that, the best thing that I can say that Hal Needham did for me is like, he didn't bring me into the business and put his arm around my shoulder and introduce me to everybody. He said, I don't want you to tell anybody that you know me. I want you to try and do this on your own. And if you have questions, feel free to call me, but don't throw my name around like you know me, because I want you to experience the business the way everybody else does. And that's probably the best thing that anybody could have done for me, because he gave me a leg up by kind of giving me an insight into what the business was and to how to treat people when I met them. But I couldn't go around saying, hey, I'm Hal Needham's protege and you got to let me in the business, because I think that would have been the wrong way to get in. So 2 years after he got me my first job, I had never worked for him another time after that first job. He called me up and said, I heard you're working on Dukes of Hazzard and jumping cars and sliding cars around. Do you want to do Cannonball with me? So I did Cannonball 1 and 2 with him, and then did Megaforce with him. And, we became really close friends after that. And 25 years later, I was able to try and work the Academy and get him nominated for an Academy Award. And he wanted the Governor's Award for an Academy Award, which was fantastic. And it wasn't all my doing. It was a lot of other stunt people helping me trying to get him in there. But I was thankful to be able to help him out in my career later on. So, it kind of was payback.
So our next question is from one of our club members, Zach, and he wanted to know what kind of training does it take to be a stuntman and work in the field of stunts, both mentally and physically?
Mentally, you have to understand that you're going to get hurt. And that's the hardest part of most people that get in the business, is that sure, most stunt people can survive twisted ankles and, hey, I've got a hurt shoulder. But if you do, any kind of action in the kind of action movies that, are the big action movies, you're going to get hurt if you're in the business for any length of time. And usually, hopefully, it's just, a broken leg, a broken ankle, a broken arm, something like that. Maybe you can survive a head injury. But a lot of stunt people, when they have a major injury, they get out of the business because they don't want that to happen again. The people that stick with it are the ones that really want to be stunt people and understand It's like being a professional football player. You're going to get hurt. There's just no way around it. And the people that say they've never been hurt have never really done a big action movie, because eventually it's going to bite you. And you have to have the mental aptitude to understand. You have to come back from that and do it over again and understand, why did you get hurt? What did you do wrong, or what went wrong around you to make it happen, and to make it a better and safer environment after that. Now, having said that, the part of the athletic part of it is a major portion of it, because you have to be in top physical condition, because you have to be able to do everything well. And that's the hardest part about, being a stunt person, is you can't just be a good car driver and survive in this business. You won't. You just can't make a living doing it. You have to be able to do everything, because when I take 15 to 20 stunt people on a job with me, they have to be able to do everything. And that's the hardest part about it, is being able to do everything is a tough line of work, because you have to excel in every single part of it. So it is a tough business. And I have to say, it's a lot of people survive it for 5 or 6 years and then get out. You can't make a lot of money in it. It's not like an actor where you do the really big movies and you make tons of money, because when you get hurt, you're not getting paid for when you're down. And that's the hardest part too, is that you're sitting in the hospital not making a dime, because the studios don't pay for you to be, not working. You sit there without a dime coming in. So it's tough to survive after you've been hurt. Now, having said that, I think the injuries when I got into the business were a lot more severe than they are now, because we were practicing and trying things that had never been done before. In today's business, that's not really the way it happens. The way it happens now is you can try stuff remote control before you ever put a human in it. And you learn what goes wrong and what doesn't. And by the time you've put a human being in it, you pretty much know what's going to happen with that vehicle, or what's going to happen with a high fall, or what's going to happen with a cable, ratchet. All these things we've done in the past, and we kind of know what's going to happen. So I think the injuries are not as frequent as they were when I got in the business. So it is safer, but it's still very dangerous. So I hope I didn't shy everybody away from wanting to be in the business, but you don't make the, millions of dollars that people think you make.
So in a lot of your credits, you've acted both as stunt coordinator and second unit director. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, just in your words, can you explain the responsibilities of those roles?
Sure. A stunt coordinator is, and we've changed the title now to action designer, simply because it makes more sense to what we do today. A stunt coordinator used to be, when I got into the business, was a guy who just showed up, and the director and the first AD, and usually a producer, would say, this is what we want. Round up a bunch of guys and get them together and see if you can pull it off for us. That's all it really was. In today's world, an action designer starts way before the movie even begins filming, and you read the script, find out what each and every character does in it action-wise, design the action sequences around that character's traits, and then go and work with the actors to try and let the actor do as much as they can do, and then try and hire stunt people who look like, the actor, and then train them to do as much as they can do. And then you try and, make each work together so that it's seamless. Now, once you've done all of that, you then have to work to get the crew involved with it, because usually when you have, like on Fast and Furious, we have 15 to 20 cars wrecking in one sequence, and you've got 300 crew members around this entire process, and you've got to protect them as well. So there's a lot that goes into being an action designer, and you have everybody's lives in your hands. And that's the difference between being a stunt coordinator and an action designer, is that you've designed everything from the start of the movie till the end of the movie, and you're protecting people's lives on the set. So it's changed quite a lot. And the other thing that's drastically changed is that you're the only department head that can walk up to an actor, a director, a producer, or anybody that's standing close to the action and say, this is where I want you to stand, and you're, out of harm's way. So you're really telling them, I'm putting you in a spot where I'm promising you won't get killed or hurt. And that's a tough position to take, with cars cartwheeling through the air and wheels coming off and, batteries flying through. You just don't really know what's going to happen at any given time, but you're trying to protect everybody. So it's a tough position to be in. So now we move into a second unit director. A second unit director now is called an action director. And that position pretty much entails directing every piece of action in a big movie. And you have to design 10 to 15 cameras and put them in the right spot and put the operators in spots where you know they won't get hurt. Sometimes you have to do completely unmanned camera positions because you know that the car or motorcycle is going to take out that camera position. So you have to kind of most second unit directors and action designers, you know, they've come from a stunt coordinator background. And when you become an action director, you usually have become a stunt coordinator early in your career, and you make that move up. And the tough part about it being an action director is that you have to know that your camera people are protected, but yet you have to also stick your neck out and put cameras in positions that are very dangerous sometimes. And you're sometimes in a car going 100 miles an hour with two cameras in a car going just as fast as the other stunt people are, with an actor in the car, and the car is being driven from the roof by a stunt person. And I know that's hard to understand, but we do have cars. We put a pod, it's kind of a steel encased cage on top of a car, and we can put the actor in the driver's seat and put cameras all around that actor, and the stunt person on the roof of the car is driving this vehicle at 100 miles an hour. And you can stick an actor in there. He's not really driving the car, the stunt person on the roof is. But it gives that actor a sense of he or she is really in the chase scene, and it gives the audience a sense of really being in the movie. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the audience member feel like they are part of the movie. They are sitting in that car or on that motorcycle or jumping off that building with the actors. And that's what makes it exciting for moviegoers, is to be in the action sequence.
So, speaking of, because we watched Goldmember last week and we've watched Cat in the Hat a few weeks back, you've worked with Mike Myers twice on Goldmember and Cat in the Hat, and we were just wondering what was it like working on both those films with that collaboration?
Well, Cat in the Hat was completely different, than Goldmember. And we went into Goldmember knowing that we wanted to make it as campy as possible, but to make that opening sequence as real as possible, because we're going to cut to Tom Cruise later. Most people didn't know that. And so when we designed the sequence, originally that whole sequence was a snow skiing sequence. And we had talked about it and talked about storyboarding it. And I kept looking at it and I kept saying to Jay Roach that I really don't think that we can outdo what's really been done on skis. So let's think of something else that hasn't been done before. And as we were roundtabling, the first thing that came up is that, do you really think we could parachute out of a helicopter and land, Mike Myers' character in a convertible car? And I said, let me ask around. And I started asking the Red Bull skydiving team. And he said, we've never really tried that before. But, if you give us a couple of weeks to try it, let's all put it together and see if we can do it. So the great part about being on a movie like that is that we had the time to tell the studio, give me a couple of weeks and let me see if I can pull this off. And as I can pull it off, we'll write a sequence around him skydiving and landing, in a Jaguar. And they said, okay, fine. So we went out, to Paris, California, into an open area, and I had my brother blind driving this car, and we brought in a couple of great skydivers. Eli Thompson was the guy that did it. And it took us, oddly enough, about 6 jumps to get him even close to the car. And once he was close to the car, I said, okay, I know we can do it. Let's not try and injure anybody, because he has to jettison his parachute when he knows that he's in the car. He has to pull the rings on his shoulders and drop into the seat. Well, if he pulls too early, he hits the windshield. If he pulls too late, he hits the back of the car and falls off the back at, 25, 30 miles an hour. So once we knew we could get it, we went to Moab, and that was the difficult thing, because Moab was very, very windy. And so we had wind shut us down a couple of times. It's a very touchy sequence to do, but we knew we had to do it. And, once we got there, there were a lot of other things that came into play that made it much more difficult. And I had communication in my helicopter with my brother in the Jaguar. And I could tell him whether to slow up or speed up to accommodate Eli coming down and getting close to the car. we got it on the third or fourth take, and it was seamless. And I got to say, I've never tried that before. I've never done that before, but being able to do that in one take, I wish they hadn't cut it up, but they did. But I still know that we did it in one take. And the one mistake I made, which could have been catastrophic, but luckily it wasn't, was I had Fritz, who was our camera operator, in another parachute behind Eli with a helmet camera on. And he was filming Eli from behind with a helmet camera on in a parachute. Well, I knew that when we got Eli close to the car, he's going to jettison his chute and drop into the car. And that's the shot I want from Fritz, from behind him. What I didn't take into account is that Fritz's chute tangled up into Eli's chute and stalled his chute when he was 25 feet above the ground. And he dropped into the ground from 25 feet. Luckily, it wasn't a free fall, but he augured into the ground behind Eli. And I was really afraid that he was hurt at the time, knowing that Eli had made his drop in perfectly. I'm in on the radio saying, check out Fritz, check out Fritz. He hit pretty hard. And luckily, he just had a sprained ankle and everything was fine. But those are the things that you really don't think can happen, that you never really think through. And I learned a lesson there. You have to know where the parachute's going. But it was a wonderful parachuting sequence, and there's a lot more that goes into it after that. But the parachuting sequence was probably the most demanding of all of them. So now I've talked too much. I'll let you ask questions.
No, it's amazing. We all collectively agree that that's one of the best scenes in all of cinema, the opening scene of Goldmember.
It was nail biting, and also one of those ones when the winds were so drastic that Eli was just swinging from right to left. And I've got, I can't be there forever because we've got other things to shoot, and I've only got a certain amount of money I can spend. And I had to give up on, everything that I had. Eli, he had an actual earwig where Eli could hear me, but we weren't able to communicate because when he came around the mountains, we got static the whole time. So all I could really communicate was with my brother in the car. And I just had to tell Eli on like the third jump, look, our communications with me and you is not working. So you fly in and get as close to the car as you can. And I'm going to tell my brother to either slow up and speed up, and you drop in when you can. So that's the best we could do.
So what is the stunt that you're most proud of throughout your career?
Wow. You mean a stunt that I have done or a stunt that I have put together? Which one?
I guess maybe one of each, just like the most memorable for you.
Well, I think the one stunt that I did in my career, I was pretty new to the business, probably had only been in the business a couple of years. And there was a movie called The Exterminator, and the stunt coordinator called me and said, we've got a guy standing on the top of a 65-foot mountain at night, and an airplane comes over, a jet comes over and drops napalm on the top of the mountain, and the napalm explodes and blows him off the top of the mountain. And we want you to run, take 3 steps, hit an air ram, which is an explosive device. It's an air charged device that catapults you in the air, and we're going to catapult you, 20 feet out and 60 feet down into an airbag at night. Now, I had found out that 6 other stunt people had turned this one down. And I said, let me come out and take a look at it. And I got out to the cliff and looked at it. And I found out that the closest you could get the airbag was 21 feet from the edge of where you leave. And nobody had ever really projected themselves more than 20 feet on an air ram. So I said, can't we dig out the cliff some more to get the airbag in closer? And they said, no, that's as close as we can get it. So I practiced on flat ground till I could get like 19 to 20 feet every single time on this air ram, which throws you in the air. So I said, if I can get 20 feet on the ground, I know I can get to the airbag from 65 feet. So we went out there. I told him I would do it. I went out there, got on top of the cliff, tried it on the ground, on flat ground, till I got my 21 feet, till I got 20 feet, as much as I could do. And then they started loading in the gasoline, and they put the air ram right at the edge of the cliff, and right behind the air ram, they loaded in 13 gallons of raw gasoline in this big steel pot that I had to run by. And I turned to the special effects guy and said, what happens if I step on this air ram and the electrical device doesn't fire? Does the gasoline still ignite? And he said, yeah, it still goes off. And I went, well, I don't go anywhere. I'll just be standing on the top of the cliff when 13 gallons of gasoline goes off. He said, yeah, so you better make sure that this thing fires. So now that's another problem. So I went back out on flat ground and it fired twice perfectly and then misfired twice. And then I tried it a fifth time and it misfired. So I went back down and I said, I'm not going to do it, guys. I'm calling it off until we can get, this device that can fire 5 times straight in a row. The stunt coordinator said, I'll go home and pick up another air ram and bring it back here. Well, this was 2 in the morning. He had to go from Valencia, California, which is a long way away from Burbank, California. It's about an hour and a half, and pick up another air ram, bring it back to the site, loaded it on the site. It's now 4 in the morning. The sun's just starting to peak up. The director's screaming at me. I do it on flat ground and I do 5 successive hits where it works perfectly. And I said, don't disconnect anything. Pick the entire thing up, take it out to the end of the cliff. Don't touch anything. Don't disconnect anything. And we're going to do this. And I got out there. And back then, we didn't have any way to protect myself from the fire. So they just wet me down. I wore wet clothes. I wet my hair down. I wet my face down. We didn't have fire gel, which is what we have today. So I got out there in the end of the cliff. And as I was doing it, the effect guy said, oh, by the way, the director wanted me to put another 8 gallons of gasoline in the side of the cliff that's going to shoot gasoline out into the air. And I said, well, what about all the camera guys down there? He goes, well, I don't know, because it's going to be raw gasoline in the air and it's probably going to fall down on them. So now I've got to yell down to these people that the camera operators have to have some kind of protection of all the fire that's going to drop on them. So this became a big deal. So now the camera operators are now covering themselves in tarpaulins and in furniture blankets and in everything you can think of. And we've got 6 cameras down there that's all going to shoot this. And I go to the edge of the cliff and I stand out there and the prop guy hands me a real M16, which weighs 14 pounds. And I went, what happened to the plastic gun? And he goes, oh, we don't have a plastic gun. We just have the real one and you have to carry it with you. And I went, well, I can't throw a 14-pound gun out in front of me with 5 camera operators all down there with just furniture blankets on their heads. They can't get hit with this thing. And he said, well, I don't know what you tell, just throw it as far as you can to the right and hopefully you won't hit them. So in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that, but I told the camera operators I had a 14-pound gun. So the guys on my right side all put plywood over their heads, and they had guys actually holding plywood over their heads while they were filming this. And I get ready to go and they roll camera and they're dousing me down with water and they haven't touched the air ram and I'm ready to go and I've got 3 steps to get to it and I can't see where the airbag is, but I know I've got my stunt guys down there. And I said, look, if I'm on fire, put a big, huge tarp over the airbag. So if I'm on fire and I hit the airbag, the concussion of hitting the airbag, the tarp will wrap around me and put the fire out. So I thought, hey, that's a pretty good idea. That'll work great. Well, I got back to one and I'm ready to go. They roll camera. And right before they say action, I hear the medic get on the phone and the radio. And he says, cut, 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 cut. Hey guys, I've got to know what blood type this stunt guy is in case he's burned really bad. I got to know his blood type now. And I went, okay, guys, I'm O positive. Let's just roll this and let's do it. I don't want to have any more interruptions. So they roll cameras again. They've got to reload film at all the cameras. They reload again. I run, hit the air ram. It blows me up in the air, but the concussion from 13 gallons of gasoline is so intense that it felt like I got hit in the back with a boat paddle because it kind of propelled me out further than I thought. And I thought, I'm going to miss the airbag. And as I turn over, I see a bunch of crew members running the other direction because the fire from the second explosion is now raining gasoline down on top of them. I turn over, I hit the airbag perfectly in the middle. The tarp wraps around me. I'm not on fire. Everything's great. I come out of there. There's very few people around the airbag except my safety people and a few camera guys. Everybody else has run for the hills. The shot works out perfectly and I'm okay. Don't have a scratch on me. I would never do that again. And I got a whopping $750 for it. So there you go.
Oh, wow.
So that's something I would never do again. I don't care. In today's world, you do it in 2 cuts. the explosion would be one cut, and you'd be on a wire for the second cut. But I did it all in one, and I'm happy to say that I survived it. And a funny anecdote about the whole thing is when I was talking to my parents about doing it, and like I say, I'd only been in the business 2 years, my mother said, whatever they're paying you, we'll double it for you not to do it. And I said, no, I really think I can pull this off. So I didn't tell her at the time that there was going to be this much fire. I told her at the time there was just a little firebomb going off behind me, because at the time I didn't know it was 13 gallons of gasoline. But I'm glad I survived it. And that's one that I'll never do again.
Wow. So looking at behind the scenes pictures from like sets you've worked on, I was taking a glance on IMDb and looking at those. It's really impressive to see like the amount of physical and like tactile effects and sets that you guys work with. Can you explain the experience and the importance of doing practical effects rather than stunts on like green screens or with like CGI?
Yeah, I mean, and there is a big difference, a major difference. We thought about 12 years ago that the stunt industry was going to get just completely cut out and replaced by CGI. And what we found was that the viewing audience that goes to the movie theaters is a lot more savvy than the movie producers thought. They can tell when things are fake or when things happen that shouldn't happen, that okay, they kind of helped that out. There's no way they did that for real. And when we came on, our crew came on to do Fast and Furious 5, Fast and Furious 4 had kind of been, it didn't come up to the standards that of all the other Fast and Furiouses, because it had a lot of CGI in it. The car sequences were a lot of CGI cars. And you're talking about their viewing audience are guys who are really car fanatics. So we came to our producers and we said, that's why you didn't make the kind of money that you thought you made. Let's go back to doing things real. And they kind of balked at it and said, well, we want to make sure nobody gets hurt. And I said, well, let's try and pull a real vault that weighs 9,000 pounds with 2 cars. And if I can't pull it, then we'll go to CGI. But if I can pull it with 2 cars, let's do it that way. And Neil Moritz, who was our executive producer, is the guy that got behind us and said, I'm all for it. And luckily, we had a CGI crew in there that was really with us the whole time. And they said, we really want you guys to do things as real as possible too. So we were able to figure out in a parking lot how to pull a 9,000 pound vault around with 2 cars and make it real and hit other cars with a 9,000 pound vault. So that kind of set the tone, and Fast and Furious 5 gained all of its audience again and made the big numbers that it wants. And so every other movie after that kind of followed suit. And Spider-Man started doing things with more real cable pulls and a lot more real stuff. And every other movie went back to doing things real. And now we're working hand in hand with the CGI guys to make things as real as possible. Now, yes, we do use cables and we do use backgrounds that change. But if we're in a car doing 100 miles an hour, we're doing 100 miles an hour most of the time. And when we did, Fast and Furious 7, we really launched cars out of an airplane and put parachutes on them. It's just something that we did because we wanted to tell the audience that we're doing this stuff for real. So I don't think the stunt industry is ever going away, because people want to be in the seat with those people. They want to see real people doing real things. And I know when you have a Jurassic Park type movie, you have to have CGI dinosaurs. I get that. But you don't have to have CGI people. And that's where it changes. And the viewing audience wants to be that person that's running in front of the dinosaur. They don't want to see a CGI guy run. And that's what was great about the first Jurassic Park and the second one, is that Stan Winston used practical, they were puppeteered dinosaurs, but they were full size. And people really felt for that. They really felt like they were getting eaten by dinosaurs. So I think that's the real criteria, is to do things as real as possible. Yes, replace things when you have to, but keep things as real as possible.
It sounds like a very fun job for you.
It really is. You're like a kid at a candy store. It's the best part. I think I say this a lot, but I'd love to be in a room and have people tell me I can't do it and that it's not possible. And then to sit around with your stunt team, because I don't do this by myself, by any stretch of the imagination. My brother, Andy, is a big part of it. Spiro Rosados is a big part of it. And we all sit in a room and we think about these things and we say, let's prove them wrong. Let's sit here and figure it all out and prove them wrong. And then 6 months later, you've got a finished product with a film, and you love to be able to go in there and say, I actually pulled it together. I actually showed these people that we could do something that they told us was not possible. And that's the great part about it. That's the adrenaline push that keeps me in the job that I do, is to be able to do things that people tell me are not possible. And it's the same thing with Austin Powers and the parachute sequence. Nobody had ever done that before, parachute into a moving car. And, Eli told me that he could do it. And Eli Thompson is not with us. He got killed doing a skydiving maneuver. And I'm sorry to say he passed away right after, Austin Powers. But he was the guy that pulled it off for our team. And we had a great Red Bull team behind us. And, these things are dangerous. And I wish they weren't, but they are. But we have people that like to live in the world of danger. And that's what we get the adrenaline push for, because it's not the money. The money is not what we're here for. We're here because the adrenaline push gets us there and keeps our tight-knit family together. And there's not that many stunt people in the worldwide action business. There really isn't. When something happens on a set, even if somebody breaks an ankle, we know about it the very next hour. It goes throughout the entire stunt business, and you want to find out why and find out how you can fix it. So, the safety part of it has gotten a lot better, but I have to say, we're all in it for the adrenaline. That's what we're here for.
So over the years, you've advocated for a stunt category at the Academy Awards, which is definitely long overdue. And I was wondering if you'd be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's baffling. It's completely baffling as to why we don't have, an Academy Award category in the Oscars, because, if I was doing this interview and it was 7 years later, I'd say, okay, it takes a while for the Academy to try and figure it out. But we're 28, 29 years now, 29 years later, and they still have not agreed to even get us even started to have, a branch, much less a category. So there's some really hard-pressed problem with the Academy and the stunt industry, the action industry as a whole, as to why they don't want us in there, because it's not because of the televised event. It's not because we would take away other categories, because we've always agreed to put us on another night that's not televised, put us on a night that's not televised at all, and then we'll just show up and you can give us a category, but they won't do that either. So there has to be a small group in the Academy that's keeping us out. And I'd love to know why that is, because they understand what we do. After 29 years, they really understand what we do. And having these icons in the business petition for us is mind-boggling, that those people like Leo DiCaprio and, how they can make these positive, presses for us, and the Academy still says no, is beyond me. So I think what we need to do is we're going to have to protest one year, or have the public completely come out and protest with us and show up and say, we're not going to go away. We want to have our own category. And we want you to understand that what we do is something that is short-lived. A lot of these action designers, they only do this for a shortened period of time, and then they just can't do it anymore. So those people, those men and women, don't have that time later in life. So, it's like True Lies or Indiana Jones, or, Ben-Hur got a great, Academy Award for that, but it wasn't for being a stunt coordinator. It was for his, whole process. So I think we need to have an action designer category in the Academy Awards, and we need to have it this year. And if we don't have it this year, I think we're going to have to protest. And I'd love to see the public come out and protest with us, because I hate to ruin the other people who are nominated that year, but I don't see any other way around it, because the Academy is not listening. They're not even furthering to try and get us a branch. So hopefully the public will join us, and let's just try and make this happen as soon as possible.
I think we all collectively agree every year when the nominations come out.
Well, I mean, the odd part is when Helen Mirren called me up and said she really wanted to, send me a video, an iPhone video of her, in command of it and saying, I really believe in this. And so I sent that to the Academy thinking, this is where it's going to turn around, because she is not an action person. She doesn't come from an action background other than Red and Red 2. She's done a little bit of action, but this is an Academy Award winning actress. And I thought that was the key point. Didn't make any difference at all. They didn't even really acknowledge the fact that I had this video from Helen Mirren. So I'm just baffled as to why there is such a negative connotation toward the action industry. I just don't understand why, because we can really help the televised version. We'll get people to stay in the seats because you can now televise all these action things that come up. And when I talk to the director of the Academy Awards, they all are on the positive side of it. They think it would be a great thing. So like I said, there's some faction in the Academy, branch that just doesn't want us there, and we have to get around that somehow.
Well, Jack, thank you for joining us. Is there anything that you would like to promote or plug before you head out?
Well, there's a Stunts Unlimited is kind of what I've belonged to for the last 30 years. And, we've got a thing called Stand Up for Stunts, and it's, it's a petition you can sign. And, it's one of those types of things that we just tried to get 80,000 signatures. And we walked into the Academy with 80,000 signatures, and he didn't even have the dignity to come down and accept the petition. So now we're way over the 100,000 mark. If people can go up to, Stand Up for Stunts on the Facebook page or on the web, you'll find it. Just look for Stand Up for Stunts and sign that petition. And if we, end up, you'll know on Facebook whether we're going to try and protest this year. But if we do, I'd love to have the public show up too.
Okay, great. I'll
Hey.
make sure that gets out and everybody signs it, because it's
You.
true. You can't, you truly action movies aren't action movies without stunts. So they definitely need to be recognized.
Well, even comedies like Austin Powers, it's not really an action movie, but without all the action in it, it wouldn't be the same thing. So
I agree.
And the same with Cat in the Hat. So.
Would you mind, before you go, if we took a group picture, like a screenshot?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so if you want to turn on your videos, guys.
I think mine's turned on. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
You're all good. You're all good.
Oh.
All right, ready, everyone? 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. That was incredible.
I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And anytime you want to call, we'll talk about any movie you want.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a great night.
See you later.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jack. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.